Kevin McCarthy has been ousted as House Speaker after a vote in the chamber. 8 Republicans voted to remove him from the position. Capitol Hill reporter for Axios, Juliegrace Brufke, joins us now. Juliegrace, good to see you. I know we see each other often in the halls, but, what is the mood like now on the Hill?
Well, there's definitely some anger from some of the moderate Republicans, both toward the conservatives that ousted him and towards moderate Democrats that they were kind of hoping were going to be able to bail McCarthy out and help him keep his speakership. So it's definitely going to be an interesting conference meeting at 6:30 to see how Republicans kind of plan to work through this moving forward.
Did this come as a surprise?
Now, I think I've talked to a lot of members that said that they've been surprised that McCarthy has made it this long, but he kind of kept making deals and kept conservatives happy with some of the concessions that he made during the initial speaker's race. Now, that being said, we've heard Matt Gaetz and his allies kind of really rail against him about the appropriations process and been threatening this for weeks. So not a total surprise, but I do think, having spoken to Congressman Gaetz, that he did kind of initially think that Democrats would bail McCarthy out, which ultimately didn't happen.
Why don't you think that was the case?
Well, I think that moderate Democrats, after have a closer relationship with their leader, Hakeem Jeffries, than they did Pelosi. I think that they were going to follow his lead there. And I think that former Speaker McCarthy, his kind of rhetoric on the Sunday shows taking aim at Democrats, kind of blaming them for the potential of a government shutdown before they ultimately averted it, didn't sit well with a lot of members.
We know that Congressman McHenry is kind of temporarily in the role as of now. I mean, what are you hearing from members about who they would like to see as Speaker?
Now, I've talked to a lot of members in recent days about potential alternatives, and I know Majority Leader Steve Scalise's name has been brought up. Majority Whip Tom Cole's name has been brought up. Republican Study Committee Chairman Kevin Hern's name brought up. There's been an array of names, but who can get 218 is going to be kind of the million-dollar question there. It's not going to be easy in a slim majority.
I mean, do you think we're going to see a repeat of what we saw back in January?
I mean, it's very possible that a lot of these McCarthy allies kind of renominate him there, and that it's potential that he could strike a deal and ultimately some Democrats back off and vote present, and we could see another era of Speaker McCarthy. So there are a lot of different scenarios of how things could play out here, but I think we'll know a lot more after 6:30.
What does this mean for the work of Congress right now? I'm sure, as you know, and talking to a lot of moderate Republicans, their concerns were, look, we've got to still find a way to fund the government. We've got to deal with this issue of Ukraine. How does that happen without a speaker?
Now, I think things are kind of going to be ground to a halt until they figure out the speaker situation. We heard that kind of concern from members like Chip Roy, who was kind of an original McCarthy defector in January, Byron Donald, some of these guys that weren't particularly big on McCarthy initially, but felt they need to get the work done, especially these individual appropriation bills. So it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate it, but time without a speaker is definitely going to kind of slow down their process.
Obviously, we know that Congressman Gaetz was really the one who kind of initiated this motion to vacate. Why was he so successful here, considering it seems like he didn't have a lot of goodwill among his fellow Republicans?
Well, I think this clean CR definitely was kind of the breaking point, the straw on the camel's back for a lot of these conservatives that ultimately decided to oust him there. I mean, I also think there's probably some personal animosity toward McCarthy from the group that ultimately decided to oust him, and they were kind of looking at reasons. Different types of stopgap measures were kind of weighed along the way. So Congressman Gaetz ultimately pulled the trigger and was successful there.
Is there any scenario where he could be Speaker?
I don't see the vast majority of his conference or the Democratic conference being able to rally behind him. I don't think the support would be there, but it will certainly be interesting to kind of see who kind of emerges now that the seat is open.
All right. Well, Juliegrace, we'll let you get back to your reporting. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Several high-profile Republicans on the House floor today made their case as to why Speaker McCarthy should not be ousted. Here was Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie.
This is a referendum on this institution. We have tried regular order. Speaker McCarthy has tried regular order. If regular order fails today, if you vacate the Speaker, nobody is going to try it again.
Gentleman's time has expired.
This institution will fail.
I want to go back to our political panel, Maura Gillespie and Jonathan Kott. And Jonathan, since you spent a lot of time in the Senate, I mean, how do you think this is going to play with them particularly? I mean, I'm thinking about Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Who does he work with now and how?
I don't know. I mean, I guess he turns to Patrick McHenry. I mean, this doesn't help the Senate's air of superiority in calling ourselves the upper chamber, since this stuff doesn't really happen in the Senate. But yeah, it's going to be more chaos, not just in the House, but both chambers have to pass bills. The Senate can pass all the bills at once. If there's nowhere for it to go in the House, it creates a real problem and a vacuum. And I think you've already seen a bunch of Republican senators upset with Matt Gaetz because they know that he's interrupting how business can get done. Just the basic concept of governing isn't able to proceed because of one guy and because he got 7 or 8 people to go along with him who also have no interest in actually governing. And it's not like they're not holding this hostage for some policy priorities. They're holding it hostage so they can get on TV more and raise more money and get on Twitter more. And Matt Gaetz probably so that he can raise money for his legal defense fund. I think that's the real problem here. And yeah, it's going to be difficult for Mitch McConnell to find anybody to negotiate with. And look, at some point, we have the 4 corners, the leaders in the House and Senate all come together. Who's that going to be in the House? And I think that causes a real problem for Congress in general, not just the House.
And Maura, do you think Senate Republicans should have been more hands-on here? I know just from, covering the minority leader, he has been clear, even though he meets regularly with the former speaker or met regularly with him, he was always clear to kind of give him his space and say, I'm not going to tell him what to do. But was this a case where maybe McConnell and others should have been more hands-on?
I think one of the problems is that so many in the far right of the party have villainized Mitch McConnell, have accused the Senate of doing nothing, and kind of made it a them versus us. And that's a problem for many reasons, but it all goes back to relationships. And there have been seriously fractured relationships on Capitol Hill for some time now. And we're seeing that play out because it doesn't benefit the Senate to get involved in this. It doesn't benefit the Senate Republicans to get involved in this. Any leverage they had coming out of Saturday night is gone now. And so it's got to be frustrating for them, as it is for everyone else. But again, it goes down to relationships. So if McCarthy had a better relationship with Mitch McConnell, maybe we would have a different conversation. But that's not the case.
All right. Well, Maura and Scott, thank you again.